Hey folks, welcome to the Do-It-Yourself Dad channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to mount a TV on the wall the right way without having it fall off and busting up your stuff. Now the first thing you need to do is figure out where on the wall you're going to mount your TV. And something to consider is, where is it actually going to look right to mount your TV? Because if I mount it on the center point of this wall, it's going to land about here and it's not going to be centered up above our dresser. So we're going to mount it centered up on the dresser. So our dresser is 68 inches wide, which means we're going to go to the 34-inch mark. And we're going to mark our midpoint on the wall. Now I like to use pencil because pencils have erasers, so you can get all these marks off your wall later. Come up from there, so that's got our midpoint right about there. Now, the second thing you've got to figure out is how high you need to make the bracket. And in order to figure out how high you need to make the bracket, we've got to mount the mounting guys here on the back of our TV. Then we can kind of figure out the distance that the bracket is going to mount on the wall, and we'll figure out where from there we're going to put our holes. So let's mount the brackets on the back of the TV and get some measurements from there. Now on the back of your TV, there should be 4 holes right there in the back. This is kind of a standard mounting pattern. And then these are going to be marked with a left and a right. And the reason for that is these little clips mount to the outside. So you want to make sure these are all orientated in the correct position. So we're going to line this up here on the back of the TV. You want to get it as centered as you can vertically there without obstructing anything on the bottom. That's why it gives you a little bit of wiggle room back and forth to mount it. Now the other thing is, some TV backs aren't flat, they're curved. So they do come with these little spacers that you can use to stand those brackets off the back if you need them. Now we're not going to need them on this TV, but I am going to stand it off just a little bit with some of the shallow spacers to give me a little bit more room for the cords behind the TV. Something else worth noting is they all come with different length screws. You want to use the correct length screw, but you don't want to use one too long. You want to get one that's going to bite the threads inside the TV, but not actually sink too far down in the TV and maybe do more damage. So after you put the spacers in, select a screw that's going to give you enough depth to get into that TV and catch threads. I don't need something this long. It seems that actually these shorter length screws are just about right for my application, so that's what I'm going to be using. When putting these things in here, you want to get them hand tight. Don't use like an impact gun or something like that on the back. You don't need that much, and you don't want to damage the set. So with this now, we can take some measurements off this and decide where that rail needs to go. Now the rail it set is going to sit inside the frame just like so. So that'll give us a good idea of how far from the top or far from the bottom of the set it's going to be. So let's take a measurement from the bottom of the set. So the way mine is set up, it's 1 foot. It's going to be different for every other TV. So coming back over here, we need to decide where we want the bottom of our TV to be. And I want the bottom of my TV to be about a foot off this dresser. So we're going to come in here and mark a foot up. And we're going to keep it on that center line that we marked before. So we've got a foot up right there, and remember the top of that bracket needs to sit another foot above that. So we're going to come back in here and we're going to make another mark 1 foot above that. So that mark there gives us the center point of our bracket. So now we have to find some studs inside the wall to mount this thing to. But real quick before that, let me show you what a stud is in case you don't know, so you understand why it's so important to actually get this thing mounted into a stud. This is essentially what the inside of your wall looks like. You're gonna have studs, typically 2x4s, and in between the studs you have nothing, usually air or maybe insulation. Drywall, it has about the consistency of burnt toast as far as its ability to hold up something heavy, so you wanna make sure you put your screw through the wall and into one of those studs so it can hang and properly support the bracket and your heavy TV. Okay, so we have our center point. Now let's find where we've got a stud or two inside this wall. That's going to be one side and another side. So it looks like we might actually have 2 2x4s sandwiched up. So we're going to have a stud of right about there in the middle. So we know there's the 2 edges here, studs right there in the middle. So now we have a point to mount that plate. So what I always like to do, because I have marks all over the wall, is I like to make a little V. You can do whatever you want, but I like to make a little V for where that stud is. Now let's check on the other side here and see if we can find one on this side. Okay, so there's two sides of that stud, so there is going to be a stud right here. Now, the reason I think I have studs closer to each other is because I got a lot of stuff going on the other side of this wall. There's actually a bathroom and another bathroom, so there's some stuff going on here. So that's probably why I have things closer together. But I know this is a stud because that is the dimensions of a stud, so we're gonna use that as our first point. Now we can mount our bracket, so we're gonna select where we are going to put our holes. So we're gonna center that bracket up real nice right there. Make sure it's on that top line. We're gonna mount our first hole right here. And now it's time to drill. I'm gonna show you a quick tip with the drill so you don't make a big mess. And this is my little hack for the day. Take a piece of paper, fold it in half-ish, doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're gonna take a piece of masking tape, and use masking tape so it doesn't ruin the paint on your wall. Put it like that. Now let's go back over to the wall. That X is our drill point. We're gonna put this thing on the wall just underneath it. And you see now I got a little catch. So anything I drill, any of that drywall dust is gonna drop in there and I don't have to clean it up or go behind my cabinet later. You could use a shop vac, and that's what I usually use. I'll just put a shop vac underneath what I'm drilling, but if you don't have a shop vac, this is a great solution. Now the kit we're using calls for a 7/32 drill bit, but check yours to make sure you're using the correct one. And if you did everything right, you should feel resistance as you push all the way through. If you get through a little bit and it goes, it means you missed the stud. Time to do it all over. You do not want to be anchoring this thing into anything but a stud. So the instructions say you should drill all 4 holes ahead of time, but I don't want to do that. And there's a reason I don't want to do that. And that's because I want to make sure that everything lines up perfectly and I want to throw a level on this thing. This is really going to be the easiest way to do it. So we're going to mount it up here with one of the bolts right now. Get your plate centered up and make sure your holes on the other side are in an orientation where you will actually be able to get a screw in on the other side. Now we're gonna run this thing in. Now I'm using a impact driver here. You don't need one of these. You can do this with hand tools. It just makes the job easier. Okay, so it's up and it's snug, but it's not super tight. And that's so I can move this thing around a little bit, because now we're gonna grab the level, throw the level on it, and make sure that it is perfectly level. And actually looks like we nailed it. Now, something to consider is if your house isn't perfectly level, you might not want to go to level. So if you're putting it over a big piece of furniture, but maybe your floors aren't level, you might want to measure from the top of the furniture to the bottom of this and have this align up with that. Because if your floor isn't level, your furniture won't be level. And if your furniture is not level, but that's level, it'll make it look cockeyed, even though it's not. So something to think about before you put everything in place. So now it's time to drill the rest of our holes. We've got our little piece of paper there to catch the debris again. I'm going to use a little piece of tape to keep that paper where I want it. That's all there is to it. Our bracket's up. We can take down our little crumb catcher here. Let's get the TV on the wall. Now, one thing to think about before you put the TV on the wall is your cables. Sometimes getting the cables to the back of the TV is a pain. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the cables we know we're gonna need right now, which is really, for this setup, only our HDMI cable and our power cable. We're gonna hook them to the back of the TV now. Now, routing cables is a whole other thing, and we're gonna have another video on how to route cables, because you can either go through the wall and cut holes in the wall if you want to really hide them, or there's channels, and I'll show you both methods in another video, and I'll have that link down below as soon as that video's out. So, a little higher. Yeah. So here, TV's mounted up, we're all set, it looks great. Now, these cables, don't look great. And there's two options for these. You can cut a hole in the wall and feed them through and pop them out further down below, or they also make channels that you can surface mount on the wall and paint the color. I'm gonna have a whole second video on how to do both of those methods, and as soon as that video is done, it'll be linked down below, so check that video out. I hope this video helped you out at all. I hope you're doing some DIY projects around your house, but let me know what kind of stuff you're working on down in the comments, and maybe I can make a video just for you. Leave me a comment, hit that subscribe button. I got lots more stuff just like this and all sorts of other stuff coming your way. And of course, thank you for watching.